This video on fun is brought to you by viewers like you and also in partnership with the following. Discover how Kettering University students engineer their success with Kettering's amazing co-op employment programs where students earn great pay and gain valuable experience. Those accepted into Kettering University can apply for a robotics scholarship, providing up to an additional $5,000 a year in tuition assistance. Head on over to kettering.edu/first to learn more and apply. AndyMark is your one-stop shop for all your robotics competition needs. Celebrating 20 years of quality robotics parts and superior service, AndyMark employees have over 200 years of first-team experience. From mechanical and electrical products to tools and hardware, head on over to andymark.com for high-quality and affordable solutions.
Hey everyone, I'm Jordan Miller, back with Cranberry Alarm Ri3D to go over our progress that we made on day 2 and kind of recap everything we've done today.
Right, so on our daily recap yesterday, we had a lot of this intake system assembled. It just wasn't quite ready to show, but now that we have it assembled on the robot and powered, we want to show you guys how it works. There is a YouTube video on fun if you want more specifics about how it works, but it runs using a Neo Vortex, and it's using the Thrifty poly belt. So I'll go ahead and toss some notes out. So one thing that you'll notice is it doesn't really matter whether we're exactly lined up, even if a note is sort of halfway overlapping with the side of the intake. Contacting one poly belt is enough. We've also got a pretty speedy robot, so in general, we're not seeing issues like pushing the notes away. It's a pretty touch-it-own-it system. And if you've been watching us throughout today, you might notice that we're designing an entirely different intake. You might be wondering, well, why would you be designing a different intake? It looks like this one works so well. I'm going to pass it off to Reese to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Corey. Sooner or later, we'll come back to the CAD, and I'll kind of go over some of our design and kind of show what the design is kind of looking like. But kind of the main reasons we moved away from this design is that this design right here, if we were wanting to get the intake in this position, it would require a whole other mechanism to kind of move it, either through a 4-bar, a pivot, a linear slide, or something, and that would require a handoff to the shooter. So we could have maybe grabbed it here and then moved and then passed it on. But we figured we'd move away from this and kind of condense the whole thing into one. So instead of having another intermediate system, we went ahead and pivoted the whole intake, and we kind of kept the same geometry down here. So we're really only keeping these 2 rollers as our main intake. And we're going to just kind of grab it here, and then we're going to rotate. And then from there, once we're ready to shoot, we'll pass it off into the shooter and go for it. And this just kind of makes the whole assembly a lot simpler, reduces weight, reduces parts, and just makes it a whole lot easier. Awesome. So if you guys can all see me, this is what the CAD is kind of looking like today. And we're kind of going to continue to iterate on this. So if you want to check out while we keep working on this, make sure you check out the CAD. It's public, so it's posted on our Chief Delphi and posted on our Discord. So give that a check. So this is kind of what the intake is looking like. We're going to be powering the pivot through this Neo right here, and this is going to be a 3-stage Neo. It's only one stage in the CAD, but it will be a 3-stage. And then we're powering it through a 3-to-1 right here on this Neo, and that's going to be powering the wheels. So this is going to be our starting configuration. And you might notice that the note right here is peering through some of our polycarbonate on our shooter. That's a good thing. We kind of configured that the polycarbonate's the note's going to be bending against polycarbonate and be ready for shooting. But that's our starting configuration, and then once we're ready to intake, we're going to extend this out. and it's going to come all the way down like that. And this is going to be our side view right here, and you can see how close we are to the ground. This is the goal is to be as close to the ground with this roller, because this is what I like to consider the kicker. That's going to kind of kick up the note and allow it to kind of really come into our intake. And from here, we expect the note to be pretty bent, but we don't think this will be an issue, and we think it will get a pretty good grab on it, and it won't be a big problem for us. And then from there, it'll allow us to kind of rotate back. And that'll be our stowing position, our starting configuration. And once we're ready and lined up against the subwoofer, we'll be ready to just hit the outtake button while the shooters are spun up, and then we'll score. We got a question coming in.
Yes, from Let's Do the Odyssey. Why did you choose ground intake over getting notes straight from the source?
Yeah, this is a good question. What's interesting about this game is this is very similar in terms of 2017 when it comes to where you're going to score and where you're going to pick up. With the gears, they're always going to come in the same orientation, no matter what. They can't come in upright. They can't come any other way. They're always going to be flat and round. So that makes picking them up extremely easy and consistent. So when it comes to the human player station, the human player can always throw it down. So if you always have the ability to pick it up from the ground, there'll never be a game piece that you can't pick up. And that's something for us that we think is really important, and it's just going to allow a lot of versatility.
From Parker Bowman, will you be speeding up the intake, or because of the handoff, will the current speed be it?
That's yet to be found out. Once we kind of get the new intake built up, we'll kind of see how that goes. But we're really happy with this current speed. It's pretty touch it, own it as it is. I know there's a lot of intakes that are a lot faster than this, but we're really happy with this speed right now. We'll have to see what it's like with the new intake when it comes to just holding it. But right now, we're really happy with the speed. And currently, we're operating on about a 6-to-1 on this ratio.
From Sir Cheeseball, do y'all anticipate using the belts for further indexing, i.e. to a shooter?
Yeah, so this is going to kind of come into effect with our new design. We're going to be moving away from the belts. However, these belts are super effective. We're really, really happy. When these were the Thrifty Bot belts, we found out that the glossy end was a little bit grippier on the notes than the matte end. So we'll be moving away from these. However, these were really effective. We should have no problem.
From Occasional Cereal, what are your thoughts on an underbot ground pickup?
Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting one. This one's going to be definitely a significant challenge. I don't think this is going to be possible with the kit bot on the 6-inch high grips. It's going to be pretty standard that the kit bot is going to just have about 1 7/8 inch of clearance throughout the bot. You're basically going to, if you want to tackle this, you're going to have to put countersinks on the entire bottom side of your robot. This could be much more doable with Swerve, but I don't think this is doable at all with the kit bot.
Hey, before we move on, next thing we're going to start our first giveaway from our friends at AnyMark. We're giving away an awesome t-shirt, by the way. Let's take a look at that on there. So if you're interested in winning that, make sure you are subscribed to the Fun's channel, get some extra luck, and all you got to do is type in the keyword crescendo. Easy enough. We'll draw for that in just a little bit. Thanks to AnyMark for the giveaway. We also have one from Thrifty Bot coming up later, too. And let's keep going through cool parts of this robot.
Awesome. We're going to pass it off to Corey and talk about our shooter.
Yeah, so actually a little bit before we talk about the shooter, we talked about the design that we arrived at in our CAD, but before we could come to that conclusion, we needed to do some prototyping to see if we could actually use the intake in its new format to score in the amp. And the amp has been a question that a lot of people have been having in the chat. It seems like a difficult place to score since just shooting up into the amp always seems to bounce out. But we think that we've got an interesting method to consistently do this to show you guys. So, yeah. Right here we have sort of a very basic 2 rollers with 2-inch compliant wheels, and they're connected just via this this drill, and then 2 compliant wheels acting as gears. I know the people in the chat have loved that. And we're going to be shooting the notes sort of up into the amp at an angle, and you'll notice that we've got this extra piece of churro rested up against the amp. And we found that as long as that churro is there to sort of keep the notes from bouncing out after the fact, they sort of hit the backboard, bounce up, and then I guess sometimes bounce out, but it's pretty consistent. So this was another design consideration that we had, and switching over to the next design we've been CADing today. It's just a boon that our intake system might also work perfectly as the amp scoring system. Just note that we do have that piece of churro across there. It might not have been super visible on the stream, but you do need something to sort of constrain the notes as they bounce.
All right, question from Gabe Cook. Are you worried about the notes either falling into the robot by intaking too fast or them slipping out when rotating the intake back to starting configuration?
Definitely. It hasn't been a main focus for us in looking at the design of our robot thus far. Like, as you can see, our prototypes are just intaking straight into our belly pan. But as the question implied, if you get a note stuck in your robot or under your robot, you're kind of out of commission for the rest of the match, unless you get it free. So it's not something that we have considered or designed in, but after the fact, it's going to be a point we'll look at. Yeah.
All right, couple drivetrain questions. First one from Cloud FPS. What's your thoughts on the use of swerve versus tank drive, and what is better between the two for this game?
It's a really tough question. Swerve is so prevalent in the most recent years. It really comes down to what your team is comfortable with, what your drivers are comfortable with, and how effective that you can use either tank or swerve. Swerve isn't the right option for everyone. Tank drive isn't the right option for everyone. I think that there is plenty of discourse on, choosing between the two. But for us, in the constraints that we had, and our mantra as Cranberry Alarm, sort of making an accessible robot for everyone, we decided to go with tank drive this year.
And second question from Adam Pullen. Can you put pneumatic wheels on the kit apart chassis?
I believe that it's possible, yeah. I think that you have to adjust the configuration maybe, but I know that it's capable of that.
Yeah, along with that, the AM14 U4, 5, or whatever chassis, I believe has over 50,000 different types of configurations, varying dimensions and wheels and whatever. So you can definitely do that. It'll come along with its own challenges and problems to solve, but it's more than doable.
From Chronosera, how high off the ground does that churro across the amp need to be effective?
Yeah, we tested different heights, and it sort of depends what angle you're shooting the notes up into. I mean, as low as possible is probably the answer. If you're able to angle the notes up in and just barely graze by whatever you're using to hold the notes from popping out, then that's going to be perfect. It doesn't really matter a ton, though. You can raise it up a couple inches. You see we've got these inch marks kind of laid out on here. We found that if we're shooting up from a low angle or a high angle sort of from below, that holding a churro around 32 or 36 inches from the ground is adequate.
Or from Occasional Cereal, thoughts on a smaller angle of depression and letting the notes hit the back and bending in?
So kind of shooting from straight on. I believe that we tested this in our intake video and found that as long as it's not like dead on, the notes do end up bending and going into the chute. But I would say that between shooting at a downwards angle straight into the amp or shooting up and constraining it, it's less ideal.
Let's go ahead and draw for that giveaway from our friends at Andy Mark. Once again, that was for the T-shirt. Let's hold that up so we can get a nice smile. Thank you, Reese, for that. So once again, crescendo was the keyword for that. Let's go ahead and draw. If you do win, please send first updates now or admin at firstupdatesnow at or admin at firstupdatesnow.com. It's been a long 2 days. An email or DM Fun Tyler on Discord. The winner for that is going to be Chase Maddie. Congratulations, Chase Maddie. Make sure you send that information along with your shipping info and shirt size as well, too. Or you get extra small. That's the default if we don't hear from you. We're going to also start our second giveaway. We got a lot more to still cover in the show, but we'll start the other one for our friends at the Thrifty Bot, and that's for a $25 Thrifty Bot gift card. And the keyword for that is going to be 45A, which I think we'll talk about in just a little bit as well, too, with a new wheel that we're seeing on Thrifty Bot. So 45A, one word, 45, the letter A. That's your keyword to enter the giveaway.
All right, so going back, we prototyped the intakes today, and then the next thing we turned our focus to was the shooter. We had this shooter, running last daily recap, but we really hadn't tested how it would actually fire into the speaker, and so that's something that we did a lot more testing with today. The shooter, just to go over all of the parameters again, there's a lot of details in our specific video about it, but it's using two Neo Vortexes powering both the left side and the right side, and then those are belt driven down to a second set of wheels on both sides, and the wheels specifically are the 4-inch solid Thrifty Bot 45 durometer black wheels. And we chose these wheels because they're pretty heavy. They kind of got a flywheel effect on them, and so it helps us accelerate the note through the shooter. Another question we've been getting asked a lot is, why did you use two wheels? Similar thing. If you have one set of wheels, you have less contact time with the wheels as the note goes through the shooter, and so less time to accelerate it, and it'll go less far. But now that we have the shooter set up at an angle of 60 degrees, which is what we plan to mount it onto the robot we can show you it shooting into this sort of mock speaker shroud that we've got set up. You'll notice we don't have the top of the shroud on, but given the trajectory, we're not really worried about it bouncing out. It comes in pretty close to the top of the driver's station, and so we believe that we'd be hitting the shroud towards the back of the speaker. I believe for reference, this is like at 50% power for the vortexes. Let that run a couple more times. And when we tested this at the other two angles today, we were able to shoot into the shroud. So we know that if our bot's up against the bumper with the shooter at this angle, 60 degrees, we're pretty confident that the notes are going in.
All right, from Stone Commander, if you were to do an adjustable angle shooter, how would you go about doing it?
It's a fair question. I think that there's a lot of designs to draw inspiration from in past years. It's really not something that we've considered a lot of, so I'm not going to have an exact answer to that right now. But like a simple one off the top of my head is a pivot with a winch system to slowly lower the shooter under gravity. It wouldn't be ideal, but it's a solution.
From Maxman126, if the wheel is stuck in the flywheel, meaning it's contacting in the middle of the mechanism, can you shoot reliably?
Saying that if we've already got a note sort of in the shooter wheels, are we able to start them up and get it out? Testing, I believe that we went through this scenario. The Spark Flexes and Neo Vortexes don't have an issue with enough power, just ejecting it, and then it would be on us to pick it back up and fire it again for an actual score.
And we've got several people asking about what's the compression and the angle that we settled on.
Yeah, sorry. So I didn't mention the compression earlier. The compression is 5 inches of compression. So from wheel tangent to wheel tangent is 9 inches. The notes are 14 inches. That gives us the 5 inches of compression. And then the angle, I'll say again, is 60 degrees.
From Benji K, what are your thoughts on having both a speaker scoring method that is like what you have, that also has an elevator to drop the note into the amp? You think it would be too tippy?
I mean, if you're driving around with a high center of gravity at all times, it spells disaster for tipping over. But I suspect that if done right and you can, while you're driving around the field the majority of the time, have your center of gravity low, it shouldn't really be an issue. Like we said, we did find that, shooting angled down into the amp is a very effective way of doing that. So.
From Landon Fehrenbacher, could you try using the shooter as an intake?
Definitely. It would require a lot more manipulation of the shooter in order to get it into the right angle and then tip it back up. But it's definitely an option for teams.
From Panda Man, what is the height from the floor to the top of your shooter?
Yeah, so I guess we can talk a little bit about how high the shooter is and why we chose that.
Yeah, so currently we have the very top corner of the wheel sitting about half an inch down from 26 inches. And the reason we landed on this number is because that was kind of where we wanted to sit at to be able to go under the core, and it's also right at the position to be able to score right at the lower level of the amp. And so that kind of fit really well with us, and that kind of drove a lot of our parameters everywhere else on the shooter.
From Abby Hoffman, can we see it ejected starting the motors while the note is in between them? So like right where it's at right now.
Yeah, let's try it. Let's see it.
We do it like 2 times, like do it, stop, and do it.
Yeah. I suspect it'll go out, but no guarantee on the reliability of it. So there we pulled it back.
Wrong direction? It's the left bumper? Okay.
Nice little ejection. See, with the Neos running 1-to-1, they have very little acceleration, so they may just spit it out. You probably won't get caught stuck with it, but you probably won't get a good shot out of it. And this is why it's important to get your wheels up to speed before you start feeding in your note.
Another question from Occasional Serial, what is the width of your shooter?
So the outside width right now is 19.5 inches, but again, from wheel tip to wheel tip is 9 inches, so a compression of 5 inches. As is, we have a lot of extra width on this shooter. Really all you need is from this 2x1 over to this 2x1 for what we have to be structurally sound, and that's what we plan on putting on the final robot. You'll see more of that tomorrow.
Well, let's talk about tomorrow and future plans and what's kind of next. We saw some questions about Climber. We haven't talked really anything about that or seen anything about it yet. What is your team planning on doing for a Climber? Anything else in your robot you want to talk about looking into the future for tomorrow?
So we identified a Climber as we think being important to have, but we're pretty confident we can do one reasonably well. So what we've been looking at now is either the AndyMark Climber in a box or the ThriftyBot telescoping tube kit. And we think it's pretty easy to get that under our 26-inch limit, but then also up high enough to get to the chain. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We don't think with our current configuration we'll be able to score in the trap. So we haven't put a ton of effort in the Climber, because if we can't get into the trap, all we have to do is get off the ground. So it makes it like way more flexible for spot as far as the climber, because we don't have to worry about orientation or center of gravity as much, except for just like not falling off the chain.
From AIM, with the shooter attached to the base, do you think this will be able to fit under the chain?
Yeah, so our design, like Reese mentioned earlier, is to keep everything under 26 inches. And so, what was the height of the chain?
It's like
I think it was 20, yeah, 27, 28 inches. So staying under 26 inches, we should very easily be able to go under the chain and the core of the stage. So that was something we identified as being pretty important to maximize cycle time and not have to worry about where we're driving on the field.
What are some really big challenges that you have seen so far? We've talked about a lot of successes, but what are some things that maybe would be helpful for teams that you have noticed that they might struggle with or come up against that they can learn from?
Definitely one thing is packaging. Packaging is going to be a really big struggle this year. I think with a lot of people, they're going to be trying to optimize one system to do a lot. Like, for example, we're trying to optimize our shooter to do both speaker and amp. I'm going to say, like, don't deprioritize the amp. The amp is going to be a serious challenge, and the people that can do it effectively will, be really well. And that's something that we've had a lot of hard time with, is getting a consistent amp score.
From Windows 7, how do you plan on dealing with the curve of the chain?
So this is something that really is only going to come into effect when you're climbing with someone. I think with if you're climbing alone, you can basically assume that you're going to be climbing at the lowest point of the chain, and that it should be rather consistent. You can, besides the chain swinging, you can treat it like a normal bar. So really, the only thing to consider is when you're climbing with someone, if you both go up at the same time, you both should have pretty good success.
Anything else that as a team you want to cover, go over, or give advice in regards to teams at all? Or what are you planning on doing tonight even?
Yeah.
So one other thing we hadn't covered yet, and it's both an ongoing thing and something we'll work on tomorrow as well, is that updating some of our controls things. So as mentioned before, we've moved from a stationary intake and like S-curve system to feed into the shooter to a intake that flips up. So we've added a pivot motor as well as a through-bore encoder there, and so we need to get that in a controlled manner. We don't want to be thrashing the intake in and out, and we need to be pretty precise in where we land it. So that's something we'll be working on, as well as since we're not feeding the intake into another system, we're holding the note stationary, and so we want to be able to essentially pull the note in about 7 inches and hold it in that position. So we're working on both a physical stop, probably being some Lexan or something, as well as having a limit switch there so we can programmatically determine when we have that, so we can automatically cut off the motors.
So we're going to grab a couple more questions from chat and then let the Ri3D team get back to work in just a little bit. So final questions we'll grab from chat. I know I just saw a couple come through, and then we're going to draw for that giveaway from the Thrifty bot. Don't forget, 45A was that keyword. If you are a YouTube subscriber to our channel, get 3 times luck to win. And that's for a $25 Thrifty bot gift card. Samantha, what you got?
So from Advent Gaming, what do you plan to do for Auton?
Okay, so I have been secretly on the side also trying to work on autonomous. We have pulled some of the code from Red Alert last year, 1741, our host team, as well as some the autonomous code and other code we've written for Rattlesnake, which is our 2023 Ri3D bot. And so if you follow on the GitHub, you might see some previews of things that might be happening there. It's kind of hard to say exactly where we'll get to, just because of the nature of kind of need the robot first and the systems running to be able to even start testing some things. So can't promise anything yet, but we are working on it and would love to get there.
All right, from DePenguin, how are you mounting the churro bar to the bot?
Mounting the churro bar. Oh,
Amp.
Yeah, the amp bar, that's still in the air. We have a few ideas for how that's going to go. We're really thinking about a sort of half-passive system, something that is spring-loaded to allow that bar to kind of fly out on a pivot, making it so that if we hit the wall hard with it, it's not going to break, but then something that we could winch back in maybe. We don't think it's an issue that we haven't, resolved all of these details fully yet, because we've got a lot of real estate on the top of our bot under that 26 inches in order to fulfill that need.
From Benji K, the minimum retraction for the Andy Mark climber in a box is around 3 feet. How would you use that as a climber and also stay below the 4-foot build limit?
Yeah, so it is 3 feet when you just use the stock tube. One nice thing about the Andy Mark climber in a box is that you can modify it however you want. So you can actually cut down all those tube lengths and get it a lot shorter and get it down to where you want. So that's something that we'll probably plan on doing, is cutting down our Andy Mark climber in a box and really getting it down as low as we can, and while still reaching that height that we need to.
All right, from Occasional Cereal, how does having a dead ball shooter affect your accuracy at all?
No, I'll pass it off to Corey for.
Yeah, so this is another question we've been getting a lot. We don't think that for what we're doing here in Ri3D, driving straight up to the subwoofer and firing into the speaker, that it's an issue. If you are firing from further away, like halfway across the field, we haven't been testing that. Maybe it's necessary to spin it, but so far, sort of throwing knuckleballs is panned out for us.
All right, everyone. That's going to be it for our questions for now. If more questions come in, we will grab those after the show for it. By the way, big shout-outs to Heather Martin and Scott Miller, who have both become YouTube Join members. Don't forget, if you do choose to do that, help support our creators. You get early access to some of our videos, cool emotes and chat, all that stuff as well. Let's draw for that Thrifty Bot giveaway. 45A was the keyword for that. Once again, if you do win that, it's a gift card, so we just need your email out of that. Thomas Garcia, congratulations to you. Make sure you send an email, admin at First Updates Now, or DM Fun Tyler in our Discord as well. So Cranberry Alarm Ri3D, phenomenal progress so far. Make sure you check out all the videos at youtube.com/firstupdatesnow. We have tons of them out there for you to see, lots of testing and cool stuff out there. And lastly, don't forget 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, we will also have another show where you can check back in the build progress. We will have a final reveal show at about noon Eastern on Tuesday. We know many of you won't be able to catch that. It is on YouTube, so if you have the opportunity to watch YouTube during that time, go ahead and do that. But of course, we'll archive that to YouTube as well too afterwards, so on our YouTube channel for that. I'm going to give one last round around. What's the coolest thing that you like about Crescendo so far going through this progress?
I think I'm going to steal this from both Reese and Jordan. It's the game piece. It's a unique one. It's similar to things we've seen before, but it's also different in a lot of ways. I think it's really exciting to interact with it, and I'm really excited to see how other teams interact with it.
I mean, yeah, Corey kind of stole it. The game piece is awesome. I also like the end game. The chain climbing is pretty unique. It's something where, since there's 3 sides, if for some reason your alliance partners can't work with you, maybe it is something where everyone can still contribute, but to maximize that score, you need everyone on one side. You need to get the high note on the microphone. So it's got some really high bar potential for high level play.
You didn't see our day 1 recap. We did completely tear one in half on purpose, by the way, so you can see what that stress test looks like. Reese, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely would say, kind of building off what Jordan said with the in-game, I would definitely say how well-balanced this game is. Comparing like to 2022, where you had the low goal not worth as much as the high goal. I think this year the amp plays just as big of an effect as the speaker. The same can be said about in-game and the trap door. I really like just how much, just if you excel at one thing, how much of an impact you can have on the match.
That's going to wrap it up for our recap for today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're still streaming till nice and late, so make sure you stay tuned if you're watching live for that as well. At least midnight Eastern. Who knows what time we'll actually end. We'll find out. Anything else you wanted to wrap up with?
Yeah, I was going to say, be sure to stick around. We've CAD'd everything out, and we have a lot of the necessary manufactured parts manufactured, so we're going to be assembling here soon. The robot's going to take shape, hopefully very quickly.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Cranberry Alarm. Thank you, everybody in chat. Hopefully, but if not, make sure you check out our videos. We're going to get back to our normal scheduled program in just a little bit. Thanks, everybody. And if you're in chat, why don't you give some big round of applause to all the Cranberry Alarm people who are doing an amazing job. Thanks, everybody. We'll get back to it. This video on fun is brought to you by viewers like you and also in partnership with the following. AndyMark is your one-stop shop for all your robotics competition needs. Celebrating 20 years of quality robotics parts and superior service, AndyMark employees have over 200 years of first-team experience. From mechanical and electrical products to tools and hardware, head on over to andymark.com for high-quality and affordable solutions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Watch our live shows at twitch.tv/firstupdatesnow. Join our Discord at discord.gg/firstupdatesnow. And check out Fun FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And First Updates Now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.